along with us. We were told there were a couple minutes left. We lost the audio feed there from the Breakfast Club, a town hall in Detroit with radio host Charlemagne the God, some other local leaders from Detroit, and the vice president. Let me get right into it with you because I've got more to say about and more to report about what's going on in Detroit, as well as a very big set of developments tonight. I can tell you voting now has started in Georgia, the battleground, which proved key to President Biden's victory, the Biden-Harris campaign's victory that put her in the position to now be this close to the presidency. It was also key, as you might recall, to Democrats' Senate control. And now, tonight, for the first time, we're reporting over 250,000 people today alone voted in Georgia. That is actually, if it sounds like a lot, the most ever on day one of early voting there. That is a state that was, of course, very close. When we tell you about early voting, we are telling you something about civic involvement, about high interest and turnout. I want to be clear. We are not telling you what that means about where the votes went today. They will not be tallied until Election Day. Voting is available, though, in over a dozen states now. We've been covering that. Over 5 million people, I can tell you, have voted nationwide. I'm going to continue to track that number for you here on The Beat because it shows participation. I can also tell you that the Harris campaign thinks if they get really high participation, it'll be good for them. But again, this is a sign of what's happening. And what you see on your screen is a clash that was underscored by what you just heard moments ago, Kamala Harris on that big Detroit stage for a big appearance, the town hall interview. Kamala Harris is outdoing Donald Trump on the press. She's done a blitz of interviews. The one on your screen is recent. There was the one we just heard on audio, and I'll have more of that for you tonight. She's also going to face down Fox News tomorrow, which will be her first ever Fox interview, while Trump, as you see on the screen, is bailing even on interviews he just booked, skipping out on CNBC. You may recall Trump also ceded the turf and airtime to Harris on 60 Minutes just last week. The CNBC interview has their host explaining that Trump said he would do it until he canceled.
Well, Trump canceled, and he was going to come on. Now he's canceled, so now she could come on, and we could say we offered it. Trump can't, but they're not.
That is just some of what that audience heard today about Trump bailing. I've just been told, by the way, that the Charlemagne interview ended. So for those listening, we lost about what ended up being the last 3 minutes of that interview, and I have some highlights coming up in this segment. But these TV venues aren't foreign land for Donald Trump. As you see on your screen, he used to go on 60 Minutes in these type of interviews. So now ducking and canceling on the very same outlets in the home stretch, canceling on CNBC this morning, it's noticeable. The Democrats say it shows Trump's weakness and an unsteady hand. And they say it contrasts to Harris continuing this media blitz, including the Charlemagne interview we've been listening to. Now, Charlemagne has long been a bold and independent voice. I've listened to the Breakfast Club for years. We've had him on this program. He's known to be tough on Republicans and Democrats alike. That's the kind of questions Harris is taking. And if you're keeping track of this kind of thing, Kamala Harris is now the first presidential candidate in history in either party to go from Charlemagne to Fox News back to back. Underscores part of the diverse media approach they've been pursuing, and that they say Harris can take hard questions from anywhere. So we've been listening along with you. We also cut here some of the key points in the just completed Detroit town hall, the vice president and radio host Charlemagne. Take a listen.
A lot of your press hits get criticized. You know, folks say you come off as very scripted. They say you like to stick to your talking points. And some media says you have...
That would be called discipline.
One of the reasons the America First rhetoric resonates because nobody in America would complain about where money was going if American citizens' everyday needs were being met. So what do you say to that?
We can do it all, and we do.
What could you speak to as it relates to a future Harris administration, how you would partner with the Black church?
It is my long-standing work, and therefore my pledge going forward. I will always work closely with the church.
From the griot, it's a clip that's kind of out of context, and it says that you won't do anything specifically for Black people. Have you seen that?
That's just not true. And listen, again, you said it at the beginning of this visit, Charlemagne. One of the biggest challenges that I face is mis and disinformation.
Facing the questions, addressing misinformation, addressing the questions wherever they come from, not taking voters for granted. That is the Harris side of this campaign homestretch right now. So what is Donald Trump doing instead of, say, the interviews he's been skipping? The answer is the unusual sight last night, Trump stopping that promised town hall to just play music for attendees for about 40 minutes. You're watching how that looked. He just stood there at times swaying, Unlike the Harris town hall you just heard from, where she took the questions throughout the allotted time, Trump just ended the promised Q&A, and he sort of just swayed and bopped along there with the governor. So at times he walked around. And this unusual event, WashPo calls it bizarre, is actually driving the worst kind of headlines for a candidate who needs to win over swing voters right now. There are reports about how this episode reignites questions about Trump's mental acuity at 78 years old. The music portion of the evening, if you want to say it diplomatically, was also a bait and switch for people who waited in line and went through the mags and were told this would be a Q&A session, which is why some of the crowd who are known Trump fans still left early, as Newsweek reports. Or let's go over to the nonpartisan, apolitical People magazine, not known for taking random shots at candidates in general, but it told its readers today about what it called a bizarre town hall with Trump ranting, "Who the hell wants questions anyway?" As this dragged on, Trump's own campaign then tried to tell him to stop the charade, to go back to taking questions as planned. Now, it was a message that we know came from someone important enough, senior enough on the campaign, that they could feed the plea directly into the teleprompter. "Please do 2 more questions before music," is what it said on the prompter there. The request that he take more questions was clearly ignored by Trump. Photo from the Washington Post. So how did this happen? That's a question tonight, America. Well, to paraphrase an infamous answer to that kind of question, when you answer a question with a question, who is that? And why did we get here?
Your opening statement, please, sir.
Who am I? Why am I here?
Indeed, that's a famous debate moment. Now, I can tell you, I'm going to get into what happened. Initially, 2 people apparently fainted in the heat of that event. They needed medical attention. That was dealt with relatively quickly. Then Trump responded by scuttling the questions entirely, like I mentioned. After a James Brown track played, he briefly began to speak again, as if remembering that he was still at an event that was billed as a town hall, as the Post puts it, and then continued on. Now, it is hard to capture through clips or words what went down last night. If you follow the news or have been online today or been on your phone, you've probably heard about it or seen the jokes about it. You'd have to really watch very long stretches of it to get the vibe. Nicole Wallace played a lot of it in the corner box earlier today, which I thought was a great way to kind of capture an aspect of it. Right now, we're just going to show you some of it with time codes.
Let me hear that music, please.
Well, it's fun to stay at the YMCA.
Should we keep going? All right, turn that music up.
God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds.
It went on and on like that, up through about 39 minutes. The same report notes Trump would sometimes interrupt what you just saw to then briefly speak, saying it was the most important election in the history of our country. But then the Washington Post reports he went back to his music. This was unusual, clearly unplanned. Trump's own aides tried to stop it in real time, as we showed you. So as a campaign misstep, it goes well beyond the kind of optical gaffes which have hindered other candidates, like the few seconds you can hear right here of a high-pitched scream by Howard Dean. Remember that? I'll do it one more time. Little scream there. That's a moment that saddled Howard Dean in politics for years. It's actually studied to this day. That was a couple seconds, not 39 minutes. Then there's the question of whether this is some indicator of Trump's mentality, his attitude towards his supporters, who he can tell one thing and then make them do another. People can draw their own conclusions on that. As a choice, I will tell you the same Washington Post account dryly notes that the decision to cut short the town hall and play his favorite songs was a somewhat bizarre move, given that the election is only 22 days away. Right. And that's putting it mildly. Now, this episode, which is bad for Trump politically, whether it matters or not, these aren't the headlines he wanted to drive out of this event. The episode might be more trivial than it is earth-shattering, but now I want to turn to something that matters with you tonight, because this particular episode, which a lot of people are talking about, it was a top story online, People magazine, going viral, jokes, memes, TikTok. It's a problem for Trump because it fits one of James Carville's maxims, that political scandals aren't usually the worst thing a candidate does, but the thing that confirms voters' suspicions about the candidate. And some are noting Trump looked kind of lost last night, which is a concern voters can lodge on their own, make up their own minds about. That goes without even asking the political question tonight. I bet you've already thought of it. How would the D.C. pundits react or melt down if Joe Biden did that on stage to music for 40 minutes? Then there's what we already know. The voters have concerns about Trump's age, just as they've had concerns about aging politicians in both parties. Trump's one-time ally turned rival, Chris Christie's going public with his observation of Trump's significant decline. So those are real concerns from many people. They follow the premise that Trump is declining. Simple as that he is declining and getting worse in his fitness, his plans, or both. So that's one thing. There's also another way to look at this, to look at what's going on with Trump over the years, and that is a significant but different theme. Not that he's declining, but that he has already long been revealed, exposed. And now in this campaign homestretch, it's the time to focus on the evidence that's revealed him. This would be the time to do it. As more people actually tune in, as voting is now starting, as it's all in it, we're in it. And remember, much of that evidence has been incriminatingly, famously supplied by his own aides, eyewitnesses to how he abuses power. We've heard from them in the many cases, in the probes, in the insurrection investigation, testimony from people who were in the White House up until January 6th, like White House spokesperson Sarah Matthews.
He told the people who we had just watched storm our nation's Capitol with the intent on overthrowing our democracy, violently attack police officers, and chant heinous things like "Hang Mike Pence. We love you. You're very special." And as a spokesperson for him, I knew that I would be asked to defend that. A colleague suggested that the president shouldn't condemn the violence because they thought it would be, quote, handing a win to the media if he were to condemn his supporters. And I disagreed. I knew that I would be resigning that evening, so I motioned up at the TV and I said, "Do you think it looks like we're effing winning? Because I don't think it does."
Does it look like we're effing winning? Matthews was once a Trump Republican. That was powerful testimony. She's now backing Harris for president. And we'll show you what I just had up for a moment. She recently recounted that, you might remember, on this very program. And then out on the campaign trail, a discussion with other Trump vets, warning of his danger. And they are backing Harris. Liz Cheney with Harris, and Matthews and other Trump White House administrative veterans appearing with Cheney in a key swing state. This is so unusual, and it's such a clear message to swing or conservative voters that Democrats are already turning this all into ads.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people